Purple Daily is daily Vikings entertainment. We just want the Vikings to win a Super Bowl before we die.
I will ride with this group.
Seriously, man. Please.
And away we go.
Hello, Vikings fans. This is Purple Daily. We got the sports dad, Judd Zulgad, gearing up for the Vikings are back in town. We got a Kevin O'Connell press conference today.
4 days left.
We got practice. The Dexter is back from wedding number 9 out of 15 this wedding season. Staying in a multi-bazillion-dollar mansion on the ocean.
It was easily the coolest Airbnb I have ever stayed. I don't even know if technically it was through like a luxury thing. Like it wasn't an Airbnb or a VRBO. This was through some other thing. Craziest place I've ever stayed in. Craziest place.
Did you put some photos out on like your social? You sent us a bunch of photos.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
This it now, Dex?
It was nuts. One more. Got one more wedding.
One more wedding. Okay.
One more wedding. And by the way, 2 locked in for 2025, March and September. But pre-football season.
You're in that sweet spot age, late 20s, early 30s.
March. Let's get dates.
Oh, no, May and Labor Day weekend.
Don't be.
Yep. It's not March. Not March. I believe it's March.
Free agents.
I got to check. I got double.
Dude, free agency next year, nobody's off.
Anybody that would get married the second week in March is a terrorist.
Yeah. I
Free
believe it's
agency
May.
Needs to be locked up.
The only excuse to miss especially with all of the cap space, death.
Exactly.
If you're dead, cool. Don't show up.
Do you
Otherwise,
not understand? The Vikings have the 8th most cap space right now, and there are some cornerbacks.
You selfish.
Okay.
You're what a selfish couple you are.
We have a bunch of stuff to get to here, including people griping about the Gilmore signing, which is like a corner of the Vikings internet I didn't expect to stumble into. I think people forgetting a part of Vikings history, and then Brian Flores getting absolutely torched by Tua Tagovailoa in the media. So there are a bunch of things we're going to get to today after we make a stop at Quick Trip here. Let's fuel up before this Monday Purple Daily episode, Judd.
It's funny, it took Stephon Gilmore a few days, almost a week, to agree to sign with the Vikings. But guess what? It doesn't take any time to think about where to go when you are in need of gasoline, when you are in need of a snack. And you know what? When you're in need of lunch or dinner, Quick Trip is where you want to stop. There is no guessing here. This is the all-pro place to go. Quick Trip provides everything that you could possibly need as easy as possible, fast, efficient, courteous. And here's the best part too. If you don't want to go in, so you got to pump some gas and you're like, well, I'd like to get some groceries, but I really don't want to go inside. You don't have to. Just put that app on your phone and pick up whatever that you need. Curbside pickup from our friends at Quick Trip, sponsoring Purple Daily. We appreciate them very much. Quick Trip is your one place to stop.
So I'm just going to throw this question out to the group here, kind of in the voice of people on Vikings Twitter, some emails we've received. I don't know like what percentage of Vikings fans feel this way, but it feels palpable. This thought that like I spent part of Saturday and Sunday just interacting with people, even during the preseason game. Like what's the point even? Like JJ McCarthy has been injured. What's the point of even watching the season? Why would you go sign Stephon Gilmore? Like what's the point of pushing further into mediocrity when the season is already pointless? It's already lost. You said goodbye to your veteran, established quarterback, your quarterback of the future, out for the season. So I'll pose it this way. What is the point of trying to win games in 2024 in your mind? Or would the Vikings be better off leaning into football natural causes as much as possible? Because there are a lot of people that feel like they should take advantage of a supposed opportunity to pick 5th or 6th overall in the 2025 draft.
Well, first of all, I'll continue to say this, especially in this league, when you have a roster that is competitive, which at the very least the Vikings do. Like their defense, I think, is going to be improved. Their offense, now Darnold's a huge question mark, but skill position-wise, Aaron Jones, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, I could go down a list, eventually coming back TJ Hawkinson. I don't understand the resignation that somehow this team should tank when they are not in a tanking position at all. And the other thing is, and Phil, we touched on this briefly on the show that we did on Sunday, reacting to the Browns-Vikings game, the important thing to keep in mind is if things do go wrong, and they certainly could, guys can get hurt. Kirk Cousins got hurt. Well, now, like if Darnold goes down, you're screwed. And I'm not saying that Sam is great, but I am saying if it's going to be the Nick Mullen show potentially, it's over. But if that's the case, this is why it's good the trade deadline's been moved back. So like why you're saying now, well, don't sign Gilmore, who cares about this? First of all, this league is really weird. We see it every year. There's always a couple teams in each conference that pop up. There's always a couple teams that go down. We don't know who those teams are going to be. It could be a Detroit. Who knows? Could go down. But I think if you're a pessimist, and I like to regard myself as one, if you're a pessimist, you've got time here. You've got time to wait. If things are going horribly wrong and the deadline comes up, guess what? You make some trades then. But why would you do that now with a roster? Like, look at the pieces of this team. And I don't see why you would. I don't even see how. You can't weaken this team enough now, in my opinion, unless they get guys hurt, to tank. So, like, to me, it's a non-starter. And look, I can be Mr. Tank. In years, there are certain years where you're like, yeah, you know what? Screw it. You're not going, and it's
you're
never.
You're the tank master.
I'm the tank master.
Tanks McGee.
And I like to tank when it's appropriate, but people always forget. They somehow think that players and coaches are in on this. Like everyone's going to tank. Well, teams tank when they suck. Like players tank when they suck because they don't really tank. This is all about what you do at the deadline, and it comes from the upstairs. But yeah, I think it's ridiculous. It's absolutely crazy, in my opinion, to say, Stephon Gilmore, why bother? Why bother? Because your quarterback room just got substantially better, and I'm not convinced your defense won't be very competitive.
The plan all along, right, was for Sam Darnold to hopefully start the majority of games in 2024. That was the plan. And yes, McCarthy might have excelled or accelerated the process of maybe him being the starting quarterback of the Vikings. But in my opinion, there's still a lot to be excited about with this season. I mean, the offensive personnel is still very good. You have Justin Jefferson. And was Jordan Addison okay after the whole Cleveland
We're still
situation?
waiting on
TBD.
I think he's going to be on the injury report for week 1. And I think week 1 might be a little touch and go, but he's not going to be out for months. It doesn't look like it, something like that.
And I think just in general, the offensive personnel is very exciting. You get Brian Flores back here, who gets a little bit more of a resurfaced or reshuffled defense that should actually make them a lot better. Kevin O'Connell's a likable, fun head coach. And to Judd's point, it's football. Like I'm very bullish on the Houston Texans. I think the Houston Texans are going to be awesome in 2024. CJ Stroud could have a sophomore slump. We've seen it happen thousands of times. So there's always going to be teams that pop up. There's always going to be teams that, kind of surprise us. And the Minnesota Vikings have a long history of random dudes starting at quarterbacks and having phenomenal seasons that just come completely out of the blue. So I'm not ready to punt on this season. I don't really think anyone should be either.
Well, I almost feel, I don't know if it's like Madden or, college football, 25, this like video game world that we've lived in for, this generation, where like people think that NFL teams operate in a black and white binary. If you don't fall into tank and highest draft pick possible or Super Bowl contender, that you're doing it wrong. But like you have to move into that middle ground at some point. And I was interacting with somebody during the game on Saturday. The second half of that game was Jaron Hall did very well, but outside of like Levi Drake Rodriguez and Dwight McLaughlin, there was some downtime that game on Saturday.
Richter, what are you talking about?
Bo Richter, yeah.
Your guy.
So I'm, interacting with Vikings fans on Twitter, and somebody here, this is from Barry. He says, why even like get optimistic about Darnold? Transitional season, draft pick is the most important thing. We always screw it up by winning a game or two that we shouldn't. You say you want to win a Super Bowl before you die. The wins this season will hurt those chances. Okay, but if this team as currently constructed, and you guys have hit on some of these points, let's take quarterback out of it for a second. There's a 53-man roster that we have to look at too. You've got 2 excellent high-end wide receivers. You've got you've got one of the best left tackles in the NFL, and then Brian O'Neill, who's a top 5-ish right tackle. You've got edge rushers all over the place, young talent in Dallas Turner. Like, you've got all these things. I'm not saying it's a perfect roster, but if this roster is such that you're going to go 5-12 and pick like 5th overall, we're not talking about Super Bowl contention in 2025. Like, it's not like a switch that you can flip on and off and say, okay, hold on now. Okay, I know this roster has a lot of interesting pieces. Let's hope that it somehow leads to 5 wins and then magically like turns back into a contender in 2025.
Right.
If this roster is such, even with let's say like below average quarterback play, which there's been years, by the way, where they've brought in random one-off quarterbacks who don't play all that well and still go to the playoffs because the roster's good enough. But if this roster is a 5-win roster, you've got bigger problems, maybe with coach, personnel, and you're not talking about a window opening in 2025. So I would like to see them take a step forward, show that they have built a winning culture in some way, and then, boom, plop the quarterback of the future on top of this thing in 2025 and ride it 26, 27, 28 and see what happens.
This is a 5-win team. There's one of two things. Darnold is a train wreck, and they literally don't replace him because they're like, well, our backups are potentially Mullins and Hall, or they get guys hurt. The bones of this team is too good. Like, this is the frustrating thing, because, I mean, yeah, I enjoy the conversation of like the proper tank and how you take away the will of the players to want to compete because they're so bad. But the reality is this: if we were talking about a true, really good tank job, which now, in my opinion, is not necessary, I go back to, and I think we all sort of agreed, and it ended up being a fun year that ended in a very disappointing manner. I think we go back to O'Connell and Kwesi's first year, 22. That's when you could have stripped away pieces, right? Aging players. Now, you ran it back and won 12 games, which again speaks to how weird this league can be. But I mean, that's when I thought, you know what, come in and blow it up. Like, there's a lot of pieces here that are going to be gone. Trade them away, make changes. They elected not to. Okay, we can bicker about that. But the reality is now with what they have built, like, you can see, and would a top 5 pick be great? Yeah. But
right.
So I'm not saying like, oh no, I don't want a top 5 pick. I get what the person is saying because we have been through the frustration of a veteran Vikings team, mediocre, overachieves by a little bit, but then doesn't pay it off. Okay. We've seen that before, but in this team, look at the roster. This isn't a veteran team. This is a team that's actually got a lot of ascending parts.
But to me,
I'm not asking them to try to lose. Hey, Justin Jefferson, try to suck. He can't.
Right, but those years that you're talking about where we did lament, man, that extra game or two, that game that you beat, the 10 years ago when you could have had Andrew Luck and you wound up with Christian Ponder or whatever. Like, yeah. Most of the years that we sit here and lament what could have been, and even last year, you're like, what are they doing? Dude, your quarterback's out for the season. The trade deadline's coming up. Just trade Danielle Hunter and lean into it. And the common thread throughout all those different years lamenting the wins that shouldn't have been is you were looking for a franchise quarterback. If you're desperately looking for a franchise quarterback, you want the best possible chance. You want the most possible draft capital so that you can maneuver and position yourself to get that guy. Well, on paper and in theory, they found that guy in JJ McCarthy, and we have to see if he pans out, if he develops, but they have committed to JJ McCarthy. So I am no longer as obsessed with them having the highest possible draft pick for the best possible chance. Now, obviously, you could draft a better defensive tackle at 5 than you could at 15 potentially, but a lot of the non-quarterbacks the Vikings have on their roster that are high-end and highly paid are not top 10 picks. Justin Jefferson, not a top 10 pick. No. Christian Darrisaw was back half of the first round. Harrison Smith, like late last pick in the first round, whatever it is. So
right.
I like, again, if they were still looking for a franchise quarterback, I would say probably doesn't make a whole lot of sense to go 7 wins, 8 wins here. But you've got your guy. You're going to plug him in 2025. Start showing that you have some winning culture, winning DNA, and then put that dude on top of it in 2025.
And guess what? If you stink as the deadline approaches, you're injured. Darnold, terrible.
Schedule's tough. Yeah.
Schedule's tough. Guess what? You can go to, because I'm willing to bet there's no trade clause in his 1-year contract. You can go to Stephon Gilmore and say, hey, dude, you know what? We're going to get you to a place where you could potentially win a Super Bowl. You're in a 1-year contract with us. You have no ties here, right? So like this to me is all to be determined. This is all very much in flux. I like what they're doing now, but now this did not work out well, but we saw a little bit of this. In fact, this came in a year where I was hoping at the deadline they would do more, and they didn't. If you guys recall, Yannick Ngakoue. They traded for him around this time in training camp. It was very exciting because he was known as a preeminent rush end at the time, right? It didn't work. They were struggling, not playing well. They traded him. So like Stephon Gilmore could be a trade chip. Who knows? I just think the talk is premature right now. And the deadline, which gets more and more exciting because it is pushed back, gives you a second look-see. And that's when you can say, okay, you know what? We've won 3 games to this point. We're going to make some moves, get some draft picks, and possibly get like a top 10 pick.
Yeah.
It also, like how many times have we seen just from like afar fan bases like the Lions when they were horrid, the Browns when they've been mostly bad, like those fan bases are still jacked up for their football team. Even if they knew that those were going to be bad years, those teams and those fans always showed up to their team. So I think the notion of like punting on the 2024 season when, we all know how fun week 1 is in the NFL and the build up to it. Like we're 3 weeks away, less than that, from the opener in New York, and we're already like, this season doesn't matter. No, man, it's football. We should be super excited. That's the whole point. It's a fresh start. Everyone starts 0-0. So I just don't really get the whole, let's just be completely down on this team already on August 19th.
There was a lot of, it felt like on Twitter, especially on Saturday, ton of angst. Not quite sure why. Felt like there was a lot of Vikings purple angst.
And Twitter's not always the largest sample size to gauge the whole fan base, but
absolutely,
chances are if you're sitting there on a beautiful Saturday watching the second half, empty stadium Cleveland,
that's what you should be doing.
Bunch of 3rd and 4th stringers bitching about it on Twitter, you're probably not representing, the majority of Vikings fans, and I
admire you though. I admire you. You know what? Saturday, it was gorgeous outside. Opened a window, turned the game on. Wow. Spent the entire day watching football.
Judd opened a window.
Watching Andrew Booth ball out for the Cowboys on Saturday. It was very impressive.
Yeah. Well, you'll be motivated when the league gives you basically a warning flag that your career might be over soon.
Hey, I just got a text with a little bit of Vikings breaking news from our guy Doogie.
Oh, interesting.
Do you want it?
Sure.
This is interesting more so because it's good for the hardcore fans, and it puts another fly into the ointment of Judd's 4.0 53 coming up. Najee Thompson, cornerback who is yet to practice, has been cleared to practice and will return to practice today. And if you recall, he was a special teams monster. I think on 53-man projection 3.0, I assumed that he would probably start the season on a reserve list, but he's been cleared now. So I would not assume he will not make this team because he is a special teams ace. Also, the punting competition is done. Seth Vernon has been cut. We'll see you later. We'll see you later. And Ty James, one of, I think, 2 of the receivers that they signed from Mercer has been cut. Justin Hall and then the Gilmore signing made official.
So Justin Hall's a wide receiver, just a
very slight one too. He's 5'8", 189 pounds. Sounds like Brandon Powell 2.0.
Interesting. So they swap out Ty James receiver for Justin Hall receiver.
Justin Hall, Ball State receiver.
How old is he?
He was born he's 25, so he's not young.
He's an old guy.
Okay. He's an old man. But so Thompson cleared to practice, which is gonna create another interesting dilemma on the 53. I continue to lean towards this. I think they're going to keep one more cornerback than they did a year ago and 1 fewer safety. I don't think they're going to keep 6 safeties, which is where a potential scene trade is what they're hoping to do.
Well, is some of this semantics, like Jay Ward?
Yeah, well, no, I'm putting Jay Ward back
was
at
safety
now.
Last year,
and I'm putting him back at safety now. So I think he goes back to safety.
So they kept 6 last year?
I think they kept six safeties last year,
Yeah,
and I
you're right.
forget on cornerbacks. 7?
I think it was 6 and 6.
Okay.
Pretty
I do not
sure it
have
was
that in
6
front
and
of me.
6.
But yeah, so I think Jay Ward now with an influx of corners and Gilmore especially, I think Jay Ward, who played safety again on Saturday against Cleveland, I think he goes back there. I think Scene gets traded ideally, but Thompson, in my opinion, is going to make the team because he is. I mean, he had one of the more impressive special teams seasons that I've seen in recent memory last year. That dude made a ton of special teams plays.
Yeah, and they need reliable guys with this new kickoff format too, like who can sniff out and make a tackle.
Yep.
Hey, if you're a business owner and you're looking to sniff around and I don't know, find a company that can protect you and your assets and your employees, that's where Federated Insurance comes in. So Federated wants to make sure you have a game plan in place to stay focused on safety and preventing claims. And that's where they come in with a customizable lineup of industry-specific coverages and risk management services to help you continue your winning streak as a business owner. Federated is all about equity, integrity, teamwork, and respect. These are the 4 cornerstones that create the foundation that supports all interactions and decision-making at Federated. Minnesota-based since 1904 down in Owatonna. At Federated Mutual Insurance Company, it's our business to protect yours. Also, you may have seen on the YouTube edition of this show at the beginning, a glorious Roku TV with our faces on it. And Roku is here for the 2024 football season as a partner on Purple Daily, the #1 TV streaming platform offering streaming players a new line of smart TVs made by Roku and access to all your favorite free and premium TV, live news, and sports. I was flipping around the Roku menu over the weekend watching. We fell into we hit the Hulu button on the Roku remote and fell into a Scott Peterson documentary that was just mind-blowing, man.
Those are good.
Jeez, that guy.
Very interesting.
A sociopath.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, the new Roku Pro Series 4K TV automatically adjusts your shows and sporting events and crime documentaries with Smart Picture Max. Go to Roku.com to learn more or shop at a retailer near you. We're also giving away at the end of this month, a 75-inch Roku Pro Series 4K TV. Nearly an $1,800 value. You can register now in the Score North app under Listener Rewards. Roku, better TV for everyone. So real quick, back to the quarterback thing. Dex brought up earlier in the show just like the long line of random quarterbacks that the Vikings have plugged and played in our lifetimes. It is incredible when you look at the last 30 years of Vikings history. So, for instance, since 1993, the Vikings have been to the playoffs 15 times. 8 of those times, so more than half of those 15 playoff appearances since 1993, it's been either a backup or a one-year stopgap that was deemed over the hill or not good enough anymore. 1993, Jim McMahon. He was a backup in Philadelphia after his Bears career came to an end a few years prior. Mm-hmm. His career was basically cooked. He had some concussion issues. He joins the Vikings in 1993. And now he wasn't like an MVP caliber player himself, but he was good enough managing that team, led the Vikings to 9 wins and playoffs. Just, all right, 1 year of Jim McMahon. See you later. Let's try Warren Moon. He's too old. He's 38 years old, coming over from the Oilers. He has back-to-back Pro Bowl seasons with the Vikings in 1994 and 1995. In fact, I think he led the league in passing yards one of those years. He had like 33 touchdowns.
Yes.
So they bring him in the twilight of his career. Randall Cunningham was out of the league in 1996. He was done, retired, cast aside. He joins the Vikings as a backup in 1997, puts up a career season in 98. We all know that story. And then the next year, Jeff George, after being cut by the Raiders, joins the Vikings right before training camp. He steps in after a couple games, has one of the best seasons of his career in 1999. Judd's guy, Gus Frerotte. Yeah, that's right. Gus Frerotte, just kind of a backup, just kind of a Well, the 2008 one is the most impressive because they went 8-3 in the games that he started.
Should have started
QB wins, quarterback wins.
Should have started a playoff game.
Brett Favre, 2009, bicep surgery, bad year with 20 interceptions with the Jets. Now, Brett Favre obviously had a Hall of Fame career. Sam Darnold has not to this point. But like Sam Bradford career season with Vikings in 2016, and then a career game in week 1 of 2017. And Case Keenum, I would say of all these different examples, Case Keenum exemplifies just how much of a horseshoe this franchise has up its keister historically with random one-off quarterbacks. Like that guy has not done anything meaningful in any other season in his career as a starter. And yet he was one of the best quarterbacks in the league statistically in 2017. So I don't know what it is about this franchise for 30 years.
And they dismissed it.
Mike Zimmer didn't believe it.
See you later, dude. That's been great.
But to sit here and say, back to our original conversation, this season doesn't matter. Nothing can be done. They went to the NFC Championship game with Case Keenum. They went to the NFC Championship game with Randall Cunningham, who was out of the league 2 years beforehand. Like, done, cast aside. They went to the playoffs with Jeff George. They went to the playoffs with Warren Moon. Sam Bradford had them like 5-0 or whatever it was in 2000. I'm just saying, like, maybe I'm wrong, and maybe Sam Darnold blows up and he's terrible, and this thing, makes all of us look like idiots who've been Darnold defenders. But this franchise has a history of resuscitating quarterbacks, and that's the thing that I am currently the most excited to see.
This one intrigues me the most. So the Keenum one was just unbelievable. Like you watch that week after week and thought, what the hell? How is he doing this? He's been a backup. The rest of the names you mentioned were at times aging guys, but all had been established. This is what makes the Darnold one really interesting to me, to see how much O'Connell can work his quarterback magic. How much magic dust can he sprinkle on Sammy Boy? Because Darnold has been, a complete washout so far. When they got Moon was still really damn good. I mean, that guy was still, McMahon was aging and had obviously won a Super Bowl in a different generation of sorts. This one is, because this is as close to either complete career resuscitation, because Sam's not old. So he can either resuscitate his career entirely and likely go elsewhere and really get paid, or he's probably done. Mm-hmm. Like the rest of that list, like Jeff George had been around and he had problems with coaches. The arm talent was unquestionable, and he had good years before. This is going to be one of the most interesting case studies. And this is also why I think that I would sign O'Connell to an extension now. If O'Connell revives Darnold's career, which has like at this point 2 heartbeats left before his career dies.
He's on the quarterback ventilator.
Yeah, he is. This man's going to be seen, and by this man I mean Kevin O'Connell, is going to be seen as a complete quarterback genius. So I am as Declan said, I agree completely with this. There are a bunch of things about the 2023 or 4 Vikings, that I am really curious to see, and I think are going to be fun. Is there a disappointment that McCarthy got hurt? Absolutely. I'm not going to sit here and blow smoke and say, oh, no, it's fine. It's disappointing, because I think at some point in time he probably would have played. But that doesn't mean that it's like, oh my God, look at this roster. This roster looks terrible. I was far more skeptical going from Zimmer to O'Connell and keeping the 2022 roster intact than I am now as far as excitement.
It feels like, too, and for good reason, I think, and for the justifiable reasons, like the best coaches in the NFL that get all the offensive credit, the Kyle Shanahans, Mike McDaniel even, Matt LaFleur, all the Sean McVay coaching tree guys that have just stepped up and have rejuvenated offense in the NFL. Kevin O'Connell's not on that level yet. He's not on the national respect level of those guys. But if he gets it out of Sam Darnold, like you're putting Kevin O'Connell into now that group. Like you talk about him just like you do with the other guys we just mentioned. He still isn't there yet, and he's still done a pretty darn good job and maybe deserves a little bit more respect than what he has been given credit for. But if he turns the pumpkin Sam Darnold into Cinderella, then yes, he's the belle of the ball, for the lack of a better words. He's right in that conversation. Yeah,
and I can't remember which one of you guys said earlier in the show that every year in the NFL, multiple teams outperform what their expected win total was going to be, right? So I just pulled this up from last year. This is from CBS Sports, and it's the week before the regular season started. and it's all the over-under win totals before last season. The Vikings right now, by the way, are 6.5 in most sports books. That's their over-under win total. Yeah, they've been at 7. I think they've been at maybe as high as 7.5, but most sports books have them at 6.5 right now. Mm-hmm. Well, here are the 6.5s from last year. You know, Vegas is usually more right than they're wrong. That's how they build those ridiculous buildings with, slot machines and stuff. Indianapolis Colts were 6.5. Well, with a really good offensive-minded coach, Shane Steichen, right? Mm-hmm. Some weapons, winning culture. They start off with Anthony Richardson. He gets hurt, throwing Gardner Minshew, but just like a good competitive roster with good infrastructure, good coaching. Yep. I think they won 9 games. And they were a favorite to make the playoffs, if not for like a meltdown late and some tiebreakers. Okay, Commanders, 6.5, dud. Rams, Buccaneers, and Texans are the other 6.5s from last year. Rams outperformed playoffs.
Yep.
Buccaneers, because of Baker Mayfield.
I was going to say, yeah. And
Texans. Very similar, right? And then the Texans, with rookie C.J. Stroud.
Young QB, yeah.
So it's like, there was 5 6.5 teams. 3 of them made the playoffs. 1 won a playoff game, and now you're building towards something. Now you feel like, especially if you're the Colts are like, now we get to put our quarterback of the future in, this dynamic 260-pound monster who runs a 4.3.5 40 or whatever.
Yeah, I also would caution that this team, depending on what happens with transactions made, which I don't think there's going to be a ton during the course of the season. I also would caution that there is a chance, keep in mind, because if you're like, if the Vikings hit a top 5 pick, it's going to be unbelievable. I mean, there is a chance they could trade back to get more picks.
Yeah, I still think that's incredibly likely.
Mm-hmm. But I do at least I like what I'm seeing from a construction standpoint. And that to me is how you get a Super Bowl. Assuming that McCarthy is the guy, and O'Connell's quotes after McCarthy got hurt were pretty telling. Like, he basically said, we have our guy now. I think if McCarthy does not get hurt, we don't hear that for quite some time yet. But because he got hurt and because there's a disappointment, he basically said, hey, from what we've seen, and I don't disagree with him, we've got our guy. So to me, this is more about the trajectory in which you're building your team. And I am far more positive about that right now than I was 2 or 3 years back.
Yep. And on the 6.5 thing, like, I think there's probably a lot of listeners or viewers here like, wait, is your goal to be the Buccaneers? The Buccaneers are post Tom Brady, sort of classic mediocrity. Baker Mayfield's not. They paid him, but you know what? I know we kind of debated this over the weekend, but like, you're not going to pay Sam Darnold. You got JJ McCarthy, so. The Colts, the goal isn't to be a 9-win middling Colts team, but guess what? The Colts and a couple of these other teams showed you that they've got the bones of a really competitive team, and then if that young quarterback can take a step forward, or if they can find a solution long-term at quarterback, in the case of Tampa, they think they did with Baker. I disagree with that, but now you're building something. You can't just flip the switch from being garbage to Super Bowl overnight. I know that the Bengals did it, and people have pointed that out, where Joe Burrow gets hurt, blows his ACL in the first season, and they won just like a small handful of games. Yep. He rehabs, comes back, and then they flip the switch, and they wind up going to the Super Bowl. But that is the exception and not the rule.
Right.
There's a lot more examples of you're building something over 2 or 3 years, and that's the mode that the Vikings are in.
The nice thing is we're going to have plenty of time to see if Darnold looks like he can basically, and I think this is the most important thing, manage O'Connell's game plan, right? Like, we're not looking for him to be great. You're looking for him to manage what the coach wants. I think that they can win games. If he doesn't, you're going to have plenty of time to say, okay, didn't work out, and go and try get your top 5 pick. Go and try get your top 10 pick. I think this season to me is far more crystallized. Like, I can see it. I can see what I want to see, like, as far as it's going to be an eye test thing. Because look, the one thing that, in my opinion, it gets lost is the defense. I think the defense is going to be highly competitive. I think the defense is going to be improved. I think the defense has more parts. Now, again, if guys get hurt, guess what? Then it's off. But if you have what you consider right now to be, your safety room is really good, damn near elite. Your cornerback room just got improved. I said that if it was a 3 On Saturday, it's now at least a 6, which to me, I'll take a 6.
Yeah.
Your linebackers cores inside are solid for sure. Pace is damn good. Cashman has to stay healthy. That's my concern there because he has gotten banged up before. But, if you look at what they can do scheme-wise, I think this defense can cause problems. The other thing, too, is, okay, I'll give you this. The start of their schedule, like the first portion is tough. But why do we assume that they're going to lose to the Giants?
I don't think, dude, Daniel Jones is a disaster.
I know, but like I've seen,
I don't think they're losing.
But this whole thing is they're not going to be favored, and I get it. They're on the road, okay? But like this whole thing is, well, look at the schedule. Okay, it does get tough. But you easily could walk away from September 8th 1-0 easily.
Yeah.
I agree.
Well, I think you should. I haven't seen. I haven't looked at the latest line there, but
it's still Giants just because it's a home game for them.
3 points.
Or if my guy Drew Lock, steps up and just takes that job after being hurt here for a little bit. But
oh boy.
But then you keep looking here. Okay, let's just go down the schedule real quick. So the Giants, come on.
Well,
Daniel Jones is throwing 3 picks in a preseason game.
At the very least, it's a pick 'em. Like if we were to set the line, it's a pick 'em.
San Francisco, one of the weirdest vibes franchises of the entire offseason. Trent Williams is pissed about his contract. Brandon Ayuk is trying to get traded. Christian McCaffrey hamstring, right?
Yep.
Eric Armstead left in free agency. Just kind of feels like the Niners, it's going to be tough to push that rock back up the hill again. Right. And they might be in transition mode more than people think. Just saying. I'm not saying the Vikings should be favored.
Let's say you lose that game and you won the Giants game. Okay. Now you're 1-1. It's not the end of the world.
People are crowning Houston. Houston's a very good team, but people are crowning them really early. We'll see what happens.
And
Green Bay, there's a lot of buzz around like Green Bay beat writers and Matt LaFleur are not thrilled with the way the offense is looking so far in preseason.
So
Jordan Love throwing a bad pick or two.
Well, and LaFleur's whole thing, makes me want to puke when you ask who my number one receiver is. Dude, that's because you don't have one. And face it. Like I love this because we have justified this, right? Before, when the Vikings have a bunch of pretty good guys at receiver, but no clear one. And we're all like, well, I mean, who knows? Charles Johnson could step up and be the one. When you have Justin Jefferson.
They got some talent though. I mean,
they do have some talent there, but my point is they don't have a clear-cut guy. But anyway, keep in mind, the Packers came in here and did a Vikings team late in the season that also had injuries on defense. That defense, for a multitude of reasons, sort of fell off a December cliff. Mm-hmm. But if you go back to the game when Kirk got hurt, the defense was fantastic. I like Brian Flores' defense to give Jordan Love some trouble far more than I like Love to just come in here and carve up the Vikings. Doesn't mean he won't have a good day, but I think it's going to be a challenge.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's just because they're not necessarily favored in these games doesn't mean that
they're going to be 0-8. I don't know. They're going to be 0-8.
Just chill. We have to touch on what Tua said about Brian Flores here before the episode's over. We'll call it a segment of What Are People Saying About the Vikings, presented by Nicolay Law, the exclusive personal injury law firm of Purple Daily. Nicolay Law knows that when you or a loved one gets injured, ordinary life can come to a stop. Things can get complicated. That's where Russell Nicolay and his team come in to offer you some peace of mind and help you get the compensation you deserve after an accident. So you can start your path to winning by visiting their website, nicolaylaw.com, where you can get Minnesota's local award-winning injury lawyers on your side. 1-855-NICOLAY. That's nicolaylaw.com or 1-855-NICOLAY. The Minnesota Renaissance Festival also started this last weekend. Weekends and Labor Day through September 29th. A place where you can throw axes, you can wield swords, watch live armored combat jousting, people juggling fire sticks, as you see on the YouTube channel, real Vikings, enjoy tasty turkey legs, Nordic meatballs, pork belly burnt ends,
Football,
beer and wine, 16 stages of entertainment. You can bring the family. Over 50 games, rides, and attractions for the family, too. Tons of things to do for kids. A petting zoo. Discounted tickets at renaissancefest.com. That's renaissancefest.com. And over on the Score North app, we're giving away a 4-pack of tickets to the Renaissance Festival. That's listener rewards on the Score North app. It's free to download, free to register, and we're giving away a 4-pack of tickets to the Renaissance Festival. So this is from the Dan Le Batard show. Miami Dolphins quarterback Tua Tagovailoa drew a stark contrast between how he was coached by Brian Flores, his first NFL head coach, and Mike McDaniel, his current one. Quote from Tua, "To put it in simplest terms, if you woke up every morning and I told you that you suck at what you did, that you don't belong doing what you do, and that you shouldn't be here, that this guy should be here, that you haven't earned this right, and then you have somebody else come in and tell you, dude, you are the best fit for this. You are accurate. You are the best whatever. How would it make you feel listening to one versus the other?" Old Brian Flores not exactly empowering his quarterback in that previous head coaching job.
I feel like we knew some of this. Like, there had certainly been, Tua has certainly discussed before that he did not feel nearly as empowered by Flores as he does now by McDaniel. And he might be overly sensitive, but there might be something here to also say that Brian Flores is a phenomenal coordinator. We've had this discussion before. Like it being really good at X's and O's and schemes, which clearly Flores is a damn near genius, doesn't make you a head coach for sure. And it certainly does not make you, as they said in Office Space, a people person. Damn it, I'm a people person.
I'm a quarterback person. Why can't you people see that?
Yeah. So, I see this, and I guess I'm not totally surprised. Flores came from a culture. I mean, I think Belichick was liked more behind the scenes than we thought, but there's no question that he was very rough on players. And if you look at the Belichick coaching tree, it's probably one of the worst coaching trees of all time of a guy who was a great coach.
It is, yeah.
I mean, it is a disaster. And I think part of that was because guys like Bill O'Brien and Charlie Weiss were abrasive as hell. Like they thrived in a culture in which they could take abrasiveness, but I got bad news. In 2024, I don't know how often that works now, right? Like the generation that's coming up and playing sports, can you ride them mercilessly to get the best from them? I would argue probably not. So this sort of leads me to say there's nothing wrong with Brian Flores potentially making a lot of money from the Vikings to coordinate the defense and to not become a head coach. One, because he is actively still incredibly suing the league. And second, this to a comment in a quarterback driven league now is not going to help his cause.
No, I think, listen, I hope he gets a head coaching job again at some point. I mean, he didn't, despite the Tua stuff, he had a team that was really actively holding back resources, and you talk about a tanking period, and he had that team competing for a playoff spot. Didn't they win like 8 games in a year where they weren't supposed to?
They popped up, yeah.
They won some games at the end of the first season, and he had them as a top 5 defense, like 5th or 6th scoring defense.
Yes.
So I'd like to see him get another shot. But yeah, in a league that's driven by offense and quarterbacks and quick quarterback development, you can't be these Mike Zimmer, Brian Flores types that are just like they're not even making eye contact with their quarterback in the hallway.
They hate their quarterback.
Dude, it took Mike Zimmer until year 4 to even, at Kirk's request, to organize a weekly meeting with your franchise star player. It's amazing.
Is there a broader conversation here outside of the Vikings too about simply being very careful or not hiring defensive guys?
But there are some defensive guys or non-offensive guys, like John Harbaugh came from a special teams background.
Guy, though. But he's an everything guy. Those guys, I'm amazed that those guys don't get more jobs. Special teams guys are the secret sauce guys because they sort of live in this world of everything and they empower players.
But like D'Amico Ryans came in first year in Houston and at worst like stayed out of the way of not tanking CJ Stroud's development, and
he has done a great job. But I'm just saying you can see why it feels like more and more teams are skewing towards quarterback guys who get it. I think that position is so hard to grasp. And if you're a defensive guy, a lot of your life's work is trying to kill those guys.
Yeah, well, that's why.
And then you get frustrated when they can't perform.
But if you can't separate that as a head coach and
That's
go
what I'm saying.
from I am a defense. No, it's like now you're a head coach of a roster, and the most important thing on your roster is your young quarterback. If you can't sort of figure that out or make that mental leap, then okay, like you said, you can make a lot of money being a coordinator. So maybe this is good for the Vikings. Maybe Flores just becomes the longtime defensive coordinator of this franchise.
And O'Connell's just like, yeah, man, whatever you say.
We'll make you the highest paid quarterback.
Whatever you say
Great.
goes.
So, all right, we got to run here. Score Our Twin Show is going to be piping hot today, I'm guessing, after taking 3 out of 4 from Texas. So if you're an overlapping Vikings and Twins fan, check out the Score Our Twin Show YouTube channel, Apple and Spotify, Flagrant Howls, Judd's Hockey Show, scorenorth.com, and the Score North app for everything that we do here. And don't forget, we've got the Amor Fati swag, Purple Daily swag, at scorenorth.com/shop if you'd like to check that out too. Daily Vikings entertainment here. We just want the Vikings to win a Super Bowl before we die.